Hello, YouTubers, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 3 episodes for you here this morning, Saturday, the 7th day of January of 2017. This particular episode has 5 articles in it. All these URLs, of course, are in the description of the video, so you can pull them up and take a look at whatever you would like to take a look at in them. The first one here is off of Newsmax. Electoral College makes it official. Trump wins the presidency. It's official. Congress has tallied the Electoral College votes, and Donald Trump has been elected president. Mike Pence was elected vice president. Democrats raised plenty of objections as the votes were counted Friday in a joint session of Congress, but they didn't have the votes to sustain them. All 538 electors met in their respective state capitals in December to cast their votes. Friday's vote count, led by Vice President Joe Biden, made it official. Trump finished with 304 votes, and Democrat Hillary Clinton got 227. There were 7 protest votes. It takes 270 Electoral College votes to win the presidency. Trump won, even though Clinton received nearly 2.9 million more votes. Trump and Pence are to be sworn into office January the 20th. And that's what we have on that article for you. If you didn't see the videos that are all over the internet on what took place in Congress with the vote, you might want to do a little search for that and take a look, especially if you want to. I found it quite comical. The next article that we have is off of BizPac Review, and it says, unprecedented. Trump orders all Obama's ambassadors to leave foreign posts by Inauguration Day. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team is requiring all politically appointed ambassadors to leave their overseas post by Inauguration Day. The unprecedented order was issued without exceptions by State Department on January the 23rd, according to diplomats who saw it, the New York Times reported. The mandate breaks with decades of precedent where the past administration has granted extensions on a case-by-case basis to allow diplomats to secure other living arrangements or leave their children in schools. Times reported that a senior Trump transition official said there was no ill will in the move, describing it as a simple matter of ensuring that Mr. Obama's overseas appointees leave the government on schedule, just as thousands of political aides at the White House and federal agencies must do. Spoke on the condition of anonymity about internal deliberations, said the ambassadors should not be surprised about being held to a hard end date. With the short notice, many of the ambassadors are now scrambling to find places to live in their respective countries or back in the U.S. When you have people out there whose only reason for being an ambassador is their political connection to the outgoing president of a different party, it's pretty logical to say they should leave. Ronald Newman, the president of the American Academy of Diplomacy, a Washington-based nonprofit association for former ambassadors and senior diplomats, said, according to the Times, "But I don't recollect there was ever a guillotine in January where it was just everybody out of the pool immediately." While career diplomats tend to retain their posts through presidential transitions, many political ambassadors vacate their positions at the end of the president's term because they are donors who were nominated due to close ties with the president. Sometimes lengthy process of Senate confirmation of new diplomats, Trump's order could leave the U.S. without representatives in key countries like Germany and Britain for months, according to the Times. Many ambassadors are considering appealing the decision with Trump's nominee for Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson. The next article I have is also off of the BizPac Review, and it says, why so sure about hacking? Trump stirs pot, points out DNC didn't follow FBI access to the servers. Democrats are more concerned about covering up their own secrets than they are about maintaining national security. Democratic leaders are outraged that Russian hackers led to the release of private Democratic National Committee emails by WikiLeaks and have tipped the scales in favor of President-elect Donald Trump. Payback comes, or I'm sorry, that's an ad, all right. They sneak those in these articles. It says, but they're apparently not outraged enough to allow FBI investigators to examine its servers to any electronic fingerprints the hackers may have left behind. This has some people scratching their heads, not the least of whom the president-elect himself. And there's a couple tweets that he put out on Thursday that say the Democratic National Committee would not allow the FBI to study or see its computers info after it supposedly hacked by Russia. And the other one says, so how and why are they so sure about hacking if they never even requested an examination of the computer servers? What is going on? And the article continues and says most of the people can figure out exactly what's going on. The DNC wants to keep the FBI away from its own secrets. The DNC wants to make a big show of calling in the attack dogs while keeping them from doing any actual sniffing. They want to eat their cake and keep it too. Not surprisingly, DNC officials dispute that claim. The DNC had several meetings with representatives of the FBI's cyber division and its Washington, D.C. field office, the Department of Justice National Security Division, and the Attorney Office. DNC spokesman Eric Walker told BuzzFeed News. The FBI never requested access to the DNC's computer service. Not so, said FBI officials. The nation's premier criminal investigation agency can be accused of a lot of things, but conducting haphazard investigations is not among them. The FBI repeatedly stressed to DNC officials the necessity of obtaining direct access to servers and data, only to be rebuffed until well after the initial compromise had been mitigated, a senior law enforcement official said Thursday, according to The Hill. This left the FBI no choice but to rely on third party for information. These actions caused significant delays and inhibited the FBI from addressing the intrusion earlier. When former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said she went through the elaborate and cumbersome process of setting up private email server for official communications in favor of simply using the secure government account she was provided, she claimed it to be done as a matter of convenience. Yet before she handed everything over to the FBI, she admittedly deleted 33,000 emails and then used an application called to make sure no one saw them. It had nothing to do with convenience. It was all about keeping secrets. And so it is with the DNC. The next article I have for you, Common Sense Show with Dave Hodges. And this one is called CALEXIT is adding key members of the Obama administration. California's independence movement has some new friends, surprising friends, that will protect them from long arm of the soon-to-be Trump administration. Before I identify the California's new friends, let's talk about California's old friends. You know, the old friends that hijacked California state government. California's shady friends. As previously identified on the Common Sense Show, California has been taken over by some very shady characters who are interested in creating an independent country from the Golden State by any means possible. According to Paul Preston, reports are coming in that numerous state legislators from California, including California Senate Pro Tem Kevin DeLeon, state representatives from Florida, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, have been meeting with members of La Raza government consulate, Mexican Mafia, La IM, and California's violent Mexican gangs, Santos, Serenos, and Sur 13, La Familia, Nuestra Familia, and religious leaders, Catholic and Jesuits, to come up with a plan to separate from the United States the above-mentioned state. Governor Brown, his aides, and the Bank of China have been in attendance in several of these meetings designed to sever California from the U.S. Further, the Common Sense Show has learned, independent of Paul Preston, that George Soros is bankrolling some of the costs associated with this movement. By now, many have heard that Governor Jerry Brown is leading a concentrated effort to become El Presidente of California. Brown's efforts are supported international crime figures such as the Sequoia crime family, in which the senior Sequoia, the late Japanese general, led the rape of Nanking, World War II. He was not prosecuted by the OSS as a war criminal because he had so much money that it was deemed that he could become a valuable asset of the globalist. The Sequoia crime family came to run embedded sources close to the state of Jefferson movement, who have been embedded in Brown's CALEXIT meetings, that the Bank of China is helping to bankroll this movement in conjunction with George Soros. The Obama administration has representatives in the same room as these organized criminals. This is treason to the highest order. In addition to the criminal cabal elements already mentioned in the preceding propaganda, or in the preceding paragraphs, MS-13 has entered into this equation based upon information that I received from Border Patrol and DEA personnel obtained in the summer of 2014. I learned that MS-13 members were being captured by the Border Patrol, ordered released by the DHS. And because MS-13, as I reported 30 months ago, plays the role of political assassins for the cartel in Mexico, in which they carry out hits on law enforcement, political leaders, members of the media, and their respective family members. Later in this article, I will reveal how MS-13's style of intimidation is already coming into play with recent events directed at the state of Jefferson political leadership. Their presence guarantees the same behaviors in California and perhaps beyond for any and all opposition to this unholy alliance, traitors designed to help create the country of California, which will be a protectorate of the United Nations. As I previously reported, Paul Preston has embedded sources who have been in attendance at the CALEXIT meetings, along with the nefarious groups previously identified. Operational details are still being uncovered at the time of this printing. However, let me reissue a very severe warning for the citizens of California, particularly the white citizens. One of the topics discussed in front Preston's informant was an operational plan that somewhat paralleled what I have learned from my own sources. White people will soon be targeted by this group and their minions if the move to leave the U.S. is not successful from the legislative standpoint. The plan consists of three options. Number one, the U.S. Congress convened in a special session grants the withdrawal of California. In this case, California will also be under the control of the United Nations. This is the preferred approach. Number two, Obama may issue an executive order which grants Governor Brown the authority to withdraw California from the U.S. And number three, extreme violence, which will target black gangs and random white citizens will be executed by the cartels and their allies, such as MS-13. One scenario that was discussed at these meetings would be for gangsters to be in cars and converge on large gatherings of citizens, and then white citizens will be targeted for murder. It is hoped that the mayhem will convince the country and its government officials to allow California to leave. At this point, we are unquestionably talking about the violent overthrow of California. It should be noted that in his official capacity as a talk show host, member of the media, Paul received an answer from the governor's office about CALEXIT, and the email stated that there would be no comment on CALEXIT that would be forthcoming. That is an answer. Also, it is important to remember that the CALEXIT movement has progressed to the point to where they opened an embassy in Russia. This is clear sedition, and every one of these participants should be arrested for treason. But don't forget, we now live in a lawless America where the rule of law does not apply to the ruling class. 3 days ago, I learned that the former disgraced and discredited Attorney General, Fast and Furious as Eric Holder, has been retained by Jerry Brown to represent the state against the anticipated actions of the Trump administration. Included in the representation duties will will the refusal of California to allow the deportation of anyone that the state government does not approve. In other words, California is in effect declaring themselves to be a sanctuary state. However, the duties of Holder extend far beyond immigration. By assuming the described duties, he is, by default, the new official spokesperson of the CALEXIT movement. I have learned from a member of the intelligence community that Holder is not the only soon-to-be Obama administration refugee. Many members of the Obama administration may become roadkill in the purge against the most criminal administration in American history. Current members and former members of the Obama administration that are joining the CALEXIT team are as follows. Number one, Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Number two, disgraced and former Obama czar Van Jones. Number three, former DHS Director Janet Napolitano, who is presently running for the California University System. And number four, present mayor of Chicago and former advisor to Obama, Rahm Emanuel. The Common Sense Show has learned that CALEXIT has as a target date to the exit of the country 2019. Clintons are rumored to have an interest as well, although their gateway, as previously reported on the Common Sense Show, is Dubai, in which the Clintons have stashed away $2 trillion of stolen Haitian relief funds taken illegally by the Clinton Foundation. Do you remember the old classic movie, The Godfather? There was a scene in the movie which a reluctant Hollywood producer would not give an upstart, presumably Frank Sinatra, a foothold in the entertainment business. The Hollywood producer had a favorite horse. One morning, the producer awakened with the horse's head in his bed as a warning. The term horse's head became synonymous with intimidation by organized crime in order to achieve a certain objective. The horse's head has reared its head in California. The drug cartels have begun to leave dead animals, such as dead rabbits, on the front porches of officials who are being the State of Jefferson movement. The State of Jefferson movement is a political effort for several countries from Northern California and Southern Oregon to form a 51st state. The effort is legal and stands an excellent chance of happening. However, this movement flies in the face of CALEXIT movement. Therefore, the underworld affiliates behind Governor Brown's treasonous plan have begun the first wave of a reign of terror against these officials. I look for a level of violence to increase as the Jefferson movement gains more momentum. In light of these revelations, one can only clearly see that California is clearly a Marxist state that is controlled by organized crime figures, both domestic and foreign. In conclusion, I have been frustrated by the fact that this monumental story has not gained more traction. However, there are more and more journalists who are now starting to pay attention. One author, Katie Grimes from ReaganBaby.com, is all over this story. Katie traces the inception of the CALEXIT movement to La Raza and Mecca, and that's M-E-C-H-A. She has correctly identified many of the key players and talks about how these groups plan to disrupt violently not only California but the country to force a reorganization of the nation. And it says, I am calling on the soon-to-be Trump administration to take whatever means necessary and arrest these traitors in what could become the biggest political scandal of all time. Make no mistake about it, these are seeds of civil war. And the final article that I have for you is off of BizPac Review, and it says, what's that being built around Obama's new digs? Oh, it looks like a wall. Isn't building walls to keep uninvited people out considered rude? Not when you live in the land of do as I say, not as I do, it isn't. Celebrity news website TMZ published the construction photos of what appears to be a brick wall in front of the Obama's family new home in D.C. where they plan to move following the inauguration of Donald Trump. So is someone going to tell President Obama that's not who we are? And there are pictures of this wall going up. If you want to pull that article up and take a look at it, The article continues, says the family plans to stay in the area until daughter Sasha graduates high school, according to TMZ. Social media mocked what some considered the president's hypocrisy. And there's a list of tweets here. It says, TMZ, Obama building a great wall at the new DC home, but you don't need a wall or protection. Typical liberal hypocrisy. Another one says, I thought he said walls don't work. But I'll put my 2 cents worth here in on that article. I mean, are we sure that he's putting the wall up? Or are the neighbors having the wall constructed to keep him in? That's the question. So there you have the first edition this morning. There will be 2 more to follow. If you like what we're doing, give it a thumbs up, share it around so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe. Click that little bell beside the subscribe button and check that box so you get email messages every time I put a show up. That way you'll stay informed. We'll see you in the next episode.